Chapel. It's good to have everybody here. Hope y'all are having a great week. How many y'all having a good week? How many y'all having a bad week? How many y'all at least having a week? All right. I don't know if you noticed or not, but how many y'all about got ran off the road coming to church tonight? There's a red blur flying. It looked like a low three-wheeler motorcycle type thing. Yeah. Now, Richard, I've heard of midlife crisis. Okay. Is this maybe a senior crisis? Okay. I like it. It's pretty. Matter of fact, talk to me after we get done. We're going to ride Saturday. All right. Let's open in prayer. Any prayer requests tonight?
Y'all remember me having to go Monday and go to work on. They broke in this past Monday, so in today, and they got to go to home next Monday.
Okay.
Remember that.
All right.
Bill's having an MRI tomorrow.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Kind of like sticking an old bear into a funnel. Any others? Talked to Norma just briefly today. She called. Y'all know Gary and Kim. They came here while they was without a pastor at their church, and once Greg came, they called Greg at Pleasant Grove. That's where they were attending. Well, Kim's been having some physical problems, and they're going to be running some more tests and stuff like that. And so I know that she would appreciate your prayers, and just some different things going on. So just pray for that. Jamie's dad lasted through the weekend at the skilled therapy. I don't think he even made it through one therapy session. We had a jailbreak Monday afternoon. Huh? By 5 o'clock. I think it was by 5. But he's at our house now. Actually, home health came out today, and we're going to start doing some therapy there. So remember that situation. Any others? All right. Gerald, would you care to open us in prayer tonight?
Father, Lord, as we come before you tonight, first, I want to thank you for all your many blessings. Lord, for keeping us safe. Lord, for watching over us and traveling and going to and from work and to and from church. Lord, we just want to praise you. Thank you. Lord, thank you for all the blessings that you bestowed upon us, Lord. Home, place to come to worship you. And Lord, our friends and our family, and most of all our church family, Lord, we can hold each other up and Lord, serve you as a group, Lord, and just pray now that you continue to watch over us, Lord, continue to watch over our teachers and Lord, our deacons, our pastor, Lord, we just pray that you give them wisdom, Lord, and insight, Lord, in the direction that you have us to go. Lord, just now pray that you give this service. With anybody here, Lord, we don't know you, that they might come to know you tonight, Lord. And as we leave us, we got to pray for this service.
Amen. I forgot to mention, but also be in prayer for this Sunday, VBS Day Camp coming up, and it's going to be an action-packed day. So with COVID and all the things that has been going on, and with the workers, Dusty and them, they had all met and talked, and thought they would give it a try this way this year, and it's going to be packed. So they're cramming a whole bunch into an all-day thing. Also, talked to Dan at the funeral home today. He called. He wasn't trying to reserve a space for me, but he was talking to me about Feed the Bikers, and so we'll have that list up. And I'm telling you, I was all over the place last week thinking, my goodness, we've got VBS Day Camp, then we got on Sunday, then we've got Feed the Bikers on Saturday. And I thought, man, I hate putting, because we've done that before. Well, we've had a couple things on top of each other, and it just works you to death. I thought, well, it is what it is, and we'll be fine. It was like the glory of heaven appeared when I looked at my calendar for real, and there was a 1 on that first Sunday in August. So you don't know how happy I was in the office at Sunday morning. But be in prayer for that. We'll need food, of course. I told Dan that we're probably going to plan food for 200 or 250. I think this year will probably a larger ride because they didn't have it last year. And we've seen the numbers. I don't even know how many years we've done this now. 5, maybe 6. I don't know. It's in there somewhere. Even if we don't have enough riders, we just won't eat it. But and that is a blessing. If you've never helped with that, we come in, we love them, minister to them, and be honest, we don't get preachy with them. A lot of them that come in never attend church. Never attend church. And I know the first year some were very maybe hesitant. I don't know if from past experiences or what. Our folk, my phone was ringing off the hook. Let's say that was on a Saturday, Sunday, Monday. My phone started ringing off the hook, and just really appreciative of our church. We just love folks. So that's coming up. All right, Esther chapter 6. We're coming around the mountain. Here we come. We're getting closer. And one of the biggest things in the book of Esther that we've learned through this book is, and for you that's taken Experiencing God, how many of y'all have taken that workbook? Small group class. All right, we got some in here. We probably will offer that again at some point. I want to encourage you, everybody to take it. It takes a little work. And I remember Richard Grubbs signed up for it. He said, Mike, how much time? I said, it ain't that bad, like 20, 30 minutes a day, here and there. Well, it'd been a while since I taught through it. I mean, several years. And after that first week, Richard came up and he said, Richard, that ain't no 20, 30 minutes a day. And I said, well, you're right. And I said, but as long as you're here. And but it's a great study. And one of the things they talk about in that study, and it's the same principle here, is that God is always at work around us. And we see in the book of Esther that God desires for our faith to be active. What I mean by active is that our faith is constantly seeking Him, whether we understand our circumstances or not. You know, if I was God and had set it up a different way, I would set it up where we'd all know why everything happens. Have you ever had something happen in your life and you think, Lord, why in the world does it happen this way? Or, Lord, are you ever going to fix this? Or, Lord, are you going to take care of this? And, you know, I'd have fixed it up a whole lot different. But we learn through those times in life that God is always at work, whether we understand that or not. We don't even have to comprehend that He's at work. But He's always at work. And it talks about active faith, constantly pursuing God. And we know that Esther had been promoted to queen. Last week she approached the king, which is her husband. And for us, ladies, it's nothing for you to say, honey, you know, come here and do this, you know, whatever. It's nothing for us to talk to our wives. It was a different custom back then. For her to enter where he was unannounced or not being asked for, her life could have been taken. And we see that he graciously demonstrated grace to her, love, call it what you want, but we see that she requested that him and Haman attend a meal. Now, they used the word banquet, I believe it was, and it's not like a big feast like we're going to feed the bikers. It was more of a hands-on feast that would feed the group that was there. And so at the meal, you know, the king asked her then, and at the meal, you know, honey, what's going on? You know, even if I've got to give you half my kingdom. Now, was he literally meaning, I'm going to give you half my kingdom if that's what you want? I mean, he could. More than likely, it was an expression of, you know, just an expression that he was using, like, whatever you need, I'll do it. Whatever help you need out of it. And so we see that when they had the banquet, he's asking her, you know, honey, whatever it is. And he repeated again, I'll give you half the kingdom if that's what you need. You know? And she said, well, I'll tell you what. Let's have one more banquet. Let's have one more meal with you and Haman, because remember, Haman was there. Haman was kind of the second guy in charge, right under the king. He'd been promoted, and he was kind of the king's right-hand man. Now, after that meal, the first meal, Haman left. On his way out, guess where he walked by? Saw Mordecai. The Bible says that he was furious because Mordecai didn't do what? Bow down. And don't you think Haman didn't kind of walk that way, you know, just to see? You know, maybe not look at him, but just kind of look out the corner of his eye. And have you ever been in somebody's company that you know they didn't like it, but you kind of went on anyway? That sounds like church, doesn't it? You know what I like to do, and I know I'm kind of in somebody's company that for some reason they just don't love me the way I think they should. I love them even more. You know, they say love overcomes a multitude of sin. And I hope it's always spiritual when I do that. But, you know, you just love them anyway, despite themselves. But here, Haman, man, you know, Mordecai wasn't going to bow down to him. Was Mordecai Haman's problem? No. Haman had a lot more bigger problem than Mordecai. Mordecai wasn't his problem. Haman had a heart problem. And Mordecai was just the trigger button. And so, you know, Haman, after he passed Mordecai, saw, man, this guy don't even bow to me. Your day's coming, big boy. You know, well, he went home, and he got his wife and, you know, his friends together and said, listen, I've been with the king and queen. And guess what? I get to go again. Look how important I am. You know, look at me, look at me. Then they start talking about Mordecai. And they said, listen, just go build a gallows. And now, when we think of gallows, if you remember last week we talked about, when we think of a gallows, you know, we'll have a big stage up top, and we got nooses and ropes, and you know, those switch, and the bottom falls out, and you hang them. That's not what it was back then. This particular group of people were very, I guess, mean in how they treated people. I mean, extremely harsh. I think the pole was about 75 feet high, and they would carry them up there, and they would impale them on the pole, and then they'd drag them down. So they went to build the gallows. And that's right now. The gallows are being built. All right, verse 1 of chapter 6. And on that night could not the king sleep, and he commanded to bring the book of records of the Chronicles, and they were read before the king. So while the gallows was being built, the king couldn't sleep. How many of y'all have ever just couldn't sleep at night for whatever reason? What keeps us awake? Huh?
What we think.
What's on our mind? Yep, what we think. Worry? Snoring. You wake yourself up snoring? Okay, okay. Pain? Are you talking about Bill, or are you talking about... No, I'm just kidding. Richard, you ain't got much to talk about there. Mister, I got a new motorcycle, man. Hey, but you're our hero. So that means I get at least one new one before I get out of here in this old age. Yeah. Okay. You're setting the example. All right. And Robert Wilson's going to buy us all. Yes. So, here we are. We don't know if he had a lot of things on his mind. We don't know if he had bad pizza, you know, went through Taco Bell. We don't know what was wrong. A lot of people speculate. Do you know why I think he was awake? God's finger. Sitting there, just a-working. Wiggling around. God's just keeping him awake. You know, the hand of God. And we see after he tossed and he turned, he ordered one of his attendants It says he commanded to bring the book of records of the Chronicles, and they were read before the king. Basically, it's literally called a book of remembrance of the time in which he has served up to that point as king. Everything, you know. Out of all the books, though, that he could have picked, I'm sure there was other books in the library, that one came to mind. What a coincidence. No coincidence. No coincidence that this was happening at the time that Haman was trying to get rid of Mordecai. So then they open it up. Now, let's say they guessed right, got the right book. How many of y'all have ever just opened up a book somewhere and then just started reading? Well, of course not. Usually there's a stopping or a starting point, or of all the places he could have read about. Maybe, years before, some of his conquest and all these great things. It opened up and they began to read about the guy that informed him of that assassination attempt. Look in verse 2. It said, it was found written that Mordecai had told of goodness gracious, Bigthana and Teresh, two of the king's chamberlains, the keepers of the door, who sought to lay hand on the king, Ahasuerus. Instead of starting in the beginning, it was open to the notes about how Mordecai had saved his life. And people think, well, that was right there at the end. Oh no. Several years had passed. So, there was extra writings in there. So several years had passed since that time. And matter of fact, in verse 3 it says, and the king said, what honor and dignity hath been done to Mordecai for this? Then said the king's servants that ministered unto him, there is nothing done for him. Well, of all the places they stopped, now it's estimated about 5 years had taken place from the time the king found out about the assassination attempt and this point now. Now, and some people will argue that it don't mean that much to me, but just for a frame of reference, maybe 5 years had taken place. Well, a lot of things had taken place during 5 years. Now, imagine if you wrote down everything that happened to you in the last 5 years. That's a lot of writing. So, again, it wasn't coincidence that they not only got the right book, but they opened it at the right spot. And verse 4 says this, and the king said, well, who is in the court? And this tells me that they were building the gallows at night, and it's probably early, because I can't see Haman coming in the middle of the night. That just don't stand to reason. I think it's very early, and that's just my thoughts. But he said, who is in the court? Now Haman was coming to the outward court of the king's house to speak unto the king to hang Mordecai on the gallows that he had prepared for him. So I believe Mordecai, and this is just my opinion, was overseeing the building of the gallows. Remember, when you've got so much bitterness in your heart, it just festers. And it's like it grows. And it grows. And it grows. I remember one time, and this is a gross example. Jamie and I was at a real nice restaurant one time. Burger King was having a special. No, I'm just kidding. And anyway, I ordered the ribeye. Now, when you get into some places, you can get a ribeye, but then some places you can get a ribeye and get it black and blued. And oh man, it was good. What's one of the things about ribeyes that make them good? What's all along it? Huh? What? The marble, the fat. Now, I'm not going to tell you doctors. How many of y'all like, if you like ribeyes, how many of y'all like some of that fat? Oh yeah. It's like, oh my gosh. That's the, yeah. Dr. Kahn just don't understand that importance. Anyway, we was eating. Have you ever got caught in a situation where you're eating something and it don't get smaller but it gets bigger? It's like the more you chew, the bigger that thing got. It's like, got that fancy napkin and you're looking around, is anybody even looking, you know? You know, right? Well, big old, you know, got a big old knot in it, you know, you don't want nobody to see the napkin. But you just, I mean, you're stuck. That's what bitterness does to people. The more you gnaw on it, the bigger and worse it gets. It gets bigger and bigger. So this is what Haman was. I think he was there overseeing every little thing, making sure everything was up to par. You know, maybe that pole that they was going to slide him down on that big old stake, you know, man, just leave a little bark on that thing. Let's, you know, tear it a little bit out. You know, just because it was a cruel method of killing someone. But here we see Haman, I believe, wanted to see the king as soon as possible to get permission for the execution. I like what one pastor said about this part right here. He says, if the book of Esther shows us anything, it shows us that God manages the affairs of men, even without their knowledge. God knows what he is doing in the courts of heaven. There are no coincidences or surprises. Even without the knowledge of Haman knowing it, God was working behind the scenes. There's no surprises in heaven. Verses 5 and 6 says, And the king's servant said unto him, Behold, Haman standeth in the court. And the king said, Well, let him come on in. Just bring him on in. Verse 6 says, So Haman came in, and the king said unto him, What shall be done unto the man whom the king delighteth to honor? Now Haman thought in his heart, To whom would the king delight to do honor more than to myself? Well, here's the attendant working for the king. He said, You know, who is it? He said, Well, it's Haman. He said, Well, get him on in here. So Haman come, you know, bouncing in. I mean, he's ready. I'm sure he's got his little speech out. You know, he's rehearsed it. I'm probably positive on that. And he's rehearsed it. He's going to just lay it out there for the king. And then the first thing that the king says, you know, what's the best way to honor someone that I'm pleased with? Huh. Haman thought, well, it's got to be me, but he didn't say that out loud. You know, Haman was full of himself. You know, as the old saying goes, you give someone enough rope, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but we've heard the saying, you give them enough rope, they're going to do what? Hang themselves. You know, like I said, this isn't a literal saying, but that means someone's anger, someone's resentment, their sin, over a period of time, it's going to engross them so much that they're going to get caught in it. I've seen that in the world that we work in, you know, people of the world, in business, at work. I've seen that in church. I've seen it everywhere. And that's what happens. In verse 7 it says this, And Haman answered the king, Oh, I know what you can do. Let me just give you my advice, king, since you asked for it. For the man whom the king delighteth to honor, and can you see Haman bowing that chest out? You know, whoever you desire you want to honor, king, that, you know, pleases you and delighteth you. Verse 8 says, Let the royal apparel be brought, which the king useth to wear, and the horse that the king rideth upon, and the crown royal which is set upon his head. And let his apparel and the horse be delivered to the hand of the one of the king's most noble princes, that they may array the man with all whom the king delighteth to honor, and bring him on horseback through the street of the city, and proclaim before him, Thus shall it be done to the man whom the king delighteth to honor. Man, Haman, he wanted recognition. Remember last week I talked about looky-loos? I think it was last week. Every church has looky-loos. Remember what I said a looky-loo was? It's just a McNutt interpretation. Looky-loo. Oh, preacher, look what all I've done. I've done it for the Lord now. Look what all I've done. How many of y'all, you experienced it? I've seen that in church. Have you? How many of y'all seen it at work? Tommy, back when you was in charge over there, if you had somebody come up and say, Oh, look at all I've done. Look at all I've done for you. Yeah. You'd see right through them, wouldn't you? Yeah. You know, because it's all about them. And that's just in our world. It's the sinful nature. And it creeps over into Christians as well. And Haman says this, King, you need to get one of your advisors to go get one of your wonderful robes. Go ahead and grab that crown that you wear, along with that robe that you probably wore last week. Go get your horse that you love to ride on. Have them put all that on that individual that you want to honor. Ride them around town, around the city. And as you're, basically you put them up on that, and that attendant is holding that horse by the bridle, leading it through town. And they're shouting, oh, the king honoreth the one that pleases him. You know? I don't think Haman's desire would have stopped at Mordecai. I think he wanted total, but that's just me. So this is what the king's response was. Then the king said to Haman, make haste and take the apparel and the horse as thou hast said. Can you imagine right here? Haman gives the advice that, yes, this is what you need to do. And the king looks at him and says, that's a great idea. That is the best idea I've ever heard. Listen, we need to get the robe. We need to get the crowd, get the horse. Listen, and I want you to take it. And Haman's probably thinking, well, nobody needs to really put that on me, but it may take a whole court gesture of people, you know. But then the bottom falls out. As thou hast said, and do even so to Mordecai, the Jew, that sitteth at the king's gate. Let nothing fail of all that thou hast spoken. Then took Haman the apparel and the horse and arrayed Mordecai and brought him on horseback through the street of the city and proclaimed before him, thus shall it be done unto the man whom the king delighteth to honor. Oh my goodness. Here was Haman. He was already taking his outer jacket off ready to put the royal robe on. He was already fixing his hair. I believe that crown would fit me just fine. But the king said, go find Mordecai. I don't know about you. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall. Not necessarily right there when Haman and the king were together. But Haman had to go to Mordecai. Now, had Haman walked Mordecai's way before? All the time. All the time. Just seeing what he's going to do. Just testing him. I like to have been a fly on the wall when he not only walked by Mordecai, but he turned and walked at Mordecai. And then walked up to him and told him what was going to happen. And I believe as Haman is leading Mordecai around the city, have you ever had a kid or a grandkid or just seen a child where they get caught doing something they shouldn't do? And after the truth finally comes out and all the lies and all the stories and all the finger pointing, and then they finally just honest and they'll just talk. Now, could you see Haman leading Mordecai around and saying, the king really likes this guy. Yeah. Okay, yeah, he really likes him. He's helped the king out, blah, blah, blah. Just kind of whispering, oh no. What would have happened to Haman if he wouldn't have followed the king's orders? I mean, he was under the king. Can you just imagine the humiliation? That's what living in sin does. It will bring eventually humiliation. And can you imagine Mordecai at the gate? Now, whether he saw it or heard about it, I'm sure they knew those gallows had been built. And I'd say in the back of Mordecai's mind, wow, that's that Haman. I know it, I know it, I know it. Oh no, here he comes. Here he comes. And you know it's going to, it's bad. But maybe Mordecai looked and really noticed something different about Haman. Haman wasn't arrogant. He's probably a little more droopy-lipped. There was something maybe different about his countenance. Who knows? But imagine that conversation. Verse 12 says this. And Mordecai came again to the king's gate, but Haman hasted to his house, mourning and having his head covered. Haman's pride had been dealt a death blow. The Bible says that he walked to his house, hasted, that means to walk fast, to hurry, his house mourning. Now, it's not talking about, well, I didn't get my way. No, it ain't talking about that. It's talking about someone who mourned someone who died. That's how he was acting. I mean, it cut everything about him. And then, and having his head covered, he was embarrassed. You know? You see, when you want man's approval, anything other than that never satisfies. Never satisfies. Verse 13. And Haman told Zeresh, his wife, and all his friends everything that had befallen him. Then said his wise men and Zeresh's wife unto him, if Mordecai be of the seed of the Jews, before whom thou hast begun to fall, thou shalt not prevail against him, but shalt surely fall before him. You ever heard the old phrase, boy, you can read the writing on the wall? You know? How many of y'all, like somebody you've worked with or in your family that are younger, and, they think they know it all? Y'all ever had somebody like that in your family? Oh, they know it all. Know it all. Know it all. They're 20 years old, and they know it all. God just blessed them with 100 years of knowledge, more than anybody else that's been 20 years old. And it's like you can give advice, you can share, you can tell, but they're old enough, they start making their own decisions, they're going to make their own decisions. And their writing can be on the wall. But yet they can't see it. And sometimes they got to just find that law and read that writing. Well, the wife and all of his advisors saw the writing on the wall. And she said, honey, there's no way you're going to win this one. You're going to fall before him. Not only are you going to lose this one, you're probably going to die from this one. Can you just imagine? Just previously, he was bragging to him. Now, I think here he was broken. Not necessarily broken like we would say for salvation or anything like that. But I think his pride really just got slammed. In verse 14, and while they yet were talking with him, came the king's chamberlains, or his eunuchs, those who worked and helped in the kingdom, and hasted to bring Haman unto the banquet that Esther had prepared. After the walk around the city, him just screaming at the top of his lungs about how great Mordecai is, and he brought Mordecai back around. We don't really have all the details, but we know he just left there in a rush. Ran home. It's like he just, everything about him died. That's how he was mourning. And then he talks to his wife and his friends, and they're saying all these things. And all of a sudden, there's like a knock on the door. Have you ever had something to slip your mind and you go, oh, no. There's a knock on the door, and they heard them, and I'm sure he knew who these guys was. They've been around the king too much. Hey, Haman, can y'all go get Haman? He's got a banquet that he needs to attend. It's funny how he walked to the banquet and how he left the banquet or the meal the first time. This one's a little different. I love this phrase. God's delays are not necessarily God's denials. When God delays his working, it doesn't mean he necessarily denies maybe our requests or our prayers. It's his timing. It is amazing how everything has timed itself in this whole situation. There's a lot of people, Bible scholars, they ridicule the book of Esther. I don't even get into all that, but they just ridicule it. Don't mention God enough. It don't mention this, don't mention that. You see God at work all over the place in this book. But just because it's delayed or not happening, I like God to work on my timetable. Am I the only one that's like that? I like God to work on my timetable. Now, I'm sure he would just stop everything and do that, but I know he's busy. That's not the way it works. He works on his timetable. And here we see how he's getting ready to do a great work. And it goes back to, remember a few chapters back, Mordecai tells Esther, you know, Esther, God may have just placed you here for this time and this purpose. And we know he did. So always remember, God's at work around you even when you don't know it, even when you don't see it. It may seem to drag on forever. And yet, God, just because it's a delayed reaction or action, doesn't mean he's not at work. He's still at work. That's all with his timing. All right, guys. We'll stop there and we'll pick up next Wednesday. Like I said, just a couple of, remember the VBS Day Camp Sunday. If I forget Sunday, somebody remind me that we're going to have to move some tables and chairs and stuff for the kids, I think, to give them a little extra space in here. So just remember that in your prayers. Any other thoughts, concerns, questions? All right. Y'all have a great week. Miss Linda, would you care to dismiss us in prayer? Would you be okay with that?
Heavenly Father, I thank you so much that we have the opportunity to come back to your house learning about your word. I ask you, Lord, to write it in our mind that we won't forget. Father, and plant it in our hearts that we might live. I thank you for all the blessings that you give us and for our people, Father, who needs extra touch this week. And I praise you and thank you for all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
All right, everybody get lined up out here. Richard's going to let everybody ride his motion.